Are you currently in the market for a new smart speaker? Well, in today's video, we're going to take a look at the big free baseline speakers from Amazon, Google, and Apple. Which one should you buy? Well, let's find out. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Matchmaker FM. If you're a podcaster, it can sometimes be a bit difficult to find guests. Equally, if you're a guest looking for podcasts to appear on, it's not always easy to find them. Thankfully, our sister company, Matchmaker.fm, has an app to do just that. With over 70,000 users, Matchmaker FM is the best place to find, contact, and collaborate with like-minded creatives. Cut out all the time wasters and build a community of world-class content creators. And the best part, you can sign up today for free. So head over to Matchmaker.fm to get started. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick rundown of each speaker that we have on our lineup today. And it's important to know that each company here offers a smaller version of their speaker. So at Google, they have the Nest Mini, at Amazon, there's the Echo Dot, and then Apple has the HomePod Mini. Now, all of these do the exact same things as the bigger ones we're going to show you today. The only real difference here is sound quality, plus a few little hidden extras. So if you're only buying a smart speaker for the smart features, then you can't really go wrong with one of the cheaper alternatives. Also, Google and Amazon have speakers with screens as well, and Apple's got one in the pipeline. And these are great for looking at visual things like recipes and search results on a screen, but they don't usually have the same sound quality as the flagship speakers that we have here, and sometimes even the mini versions. So enough waffling, let's take a look at today's competitors. First, we have the Amazon Echo 4th generation, and this launched way back in 2022 now, but this is still the most up-to-date Echo and is the first to sport this ball shape. Secondly, in the middle here, we have the Google Nest Audio, which came out in 2020 and is still actually the most current iteration of the Google Nest Audio. And finally, we'll be taking a look at the Apple HomePod Gen 2, which is the newest speaker from Apple, launching in about 2023. So to compare these, we're going to put them through their paces a little bit, and we're going to experiment using about 8 different tests. At the end of each test, I will award a point to one of the speakers, and then at the end, we'll add all the points together and we will see which one is the winner. Number 1, ecosystem. Now, you might think this is a bit of a strange place to start, but for those yet to purchase a smart speaker, this is actually kind of the most important aspect to consider. You might not realize it yet, but you might actually already have some tech at home that is better equipped to deal with one of these speakers. For instance, some TVs, headphones, and even watches these days generally come packaged with an assistant on board, so you might want to stick with what the majority of your devices already have. So the Echo here runs Amazon Alexa, and Alexa's been around for a long time now and is widely considered to be one of the better assistants available. You'll find Alexa in a wide array of devices, like I say, and it's the assistant compatible with the widely popular Ring doorbells too. In fact, Alexa seems to have become the go-to for a lot of third-party tech makers who want to include one of the assistants in their device. The Nest speakers, such as the Nest Audio here, run Google Assistant, which again has been around for quite a long time now. And even if you don't have any Google Assistant devices, no doubt you will have seen Google Assistant crammed into pretty much everything that Google has these days. From Google Search to Google Pixel phones, Assistant is becoming increasingly used and is now even being upgraded using Google's new Gemini AI. If you have an Android phone as well, you might want to consider a Google speaker simply because your phone already has Google Assistant enabled by default, because Android is made by Google. Unless you have a Samsung phone, because Bixby is default on there. Sorry about that. And last but not least, the HomePod is run with Siri. Now, Siri was one of the first assistants to appear on the scene, and it kind of shows. Yeah, it's become a bit of a joke in 2024 that Siri is fairly useless, but all of that could be changing soon. Like Google, Apple is refreshing Siri with Apple Intelligence and ChatGPT, so it will be getting a lot more helpful in future. However, whether or not this will actually come to the HomePods is a bit unclear at the moment. Now, you won't find Siri on many non-Apple devices, but obviously Siri is the default on iPhones, Macs, Apple Watches, and Apple TVs, and these are all things that are widely popular, and I imagine a large majority of you watching will have one of these. But something I do want to mention here is that Google, Amazon, and Apple are all on board with working with Matter, which is essentially a standard set for all smart home companies to work together. This basically means that if you buy a smart bulb, you should be able to use it with any smart speaker, no matter what assistant it's running. So in terms of which is the best here, it's kind of hard to give a point to any of them because they all kind of do the same things, and it very much depends on what you're already invested in, like I say. However, if we are basing this on which ecosystem is the best overall, this is probably gonna have to go to Apple. Even though Siri isn't available on much aside from Apple stuff, the Apple ecosystem is flawless. Everything from creating a calendar event to switching music playback, It's just so easy, especially if you have lots of Apple devices. Because Amazon don't make phones or PCs unlike Google and Apple, it's hard to give them the point on this one. And while Google has made big strides, their ecosystem in general is still a bit messy in comparison to Apple. Number 2, setup. To set up a HomePod, all you need to do is plug it in and like magic, you'll get a notification on your phone to set it up. And then you just need to follow a few instructions. Boom, done. However, there is a negative to all this. And this is something I'll come back to throughout this whole comparison. And that is, you can't set up this using anything other than an iPhone. So basically, if you don't have an Apple device, there's little to no point in buying the HomePod. Luckily, Google and Amazon do let you set up theirs with any phone. Basically, you just need to have their apps downloaded. With Google, that's the Google Home app. Simply plug in your Google Nest speaker, and then you'll find the app, download it, and it should detect it automatically. The Echo setup is much the same. So for this round, I just have to give the points to Google and Amazon, because while the Apple setup is flawless, comes at the cost of needing an Apple device, which not everyone does. Number 3, mic and recognition. So this is where we're going to get into the crux of the more specific devices in front of me here. Obviously, you're going to be speaking with these guys a fair bit, and you'll want them to listen to you and understand you preferably. So here I'll be testing out how well they hear you and if they understand you and direct you to the correct answers you need. So to see which was the best in this regard, I asked some of the most common smart speaker questions you're likely to ask them. I didn't actually find many issues with any of these in terms of picking up my voice and sending me to the right answers. Like I said at the start of this video, the assistant that does struggle the most is Siri. Occasionally Siri will just not reply to you at all or ignore you. And a lot of this does actually come down to the fact that Siri is available on your phone, on your MacBook potentially. And sometimes Siri, if you want this Siri to reply to you, another Siri will reply to you, and that causes confusion. The Nest speaker picked me up pretty well, but will occasionally ignore you when at a long distance. And Amazon is pretty good, to be fair. Occasionally might miss you, and occasionally will play something and you'll tell it to stop and it won't listen. But overall, I think Amazon is probably the best in this regard. So overall, this round is going to have to go to the Echo. Number 4, designs and controls. Now, obviously, this round will be a bit subjective, as design is kind of down to personal preference, and what you might like is what I might not like. But let's take a look anyway. So, like I say, the Echo has this sort of ball shape to it, and this is kind of spread across the full Echo lineup now. While I don't mind it, and I especially don't mind it on the smaller speakers, I think they look quite cute. On the bigger, bolder Echo, I do think it looks a bit naff, and I will say that I do actually prefer the old Echo design that they switched from in the previous generation. It does kind of look like someone's just put a massive tennis ball on a desk. But I will say, when it lights up and you get that sort of blue reflection on the desk, I think that looks really nice and it really makes it stand out. There's also 2 colors to choose from, with charcoal, which is what we have here, and twilight blue. And the mini ones also have loads of other colors, which unfortunately don't come over to the bigger one. But one thing that is the same is the controls, which are sat on the top, making it really easy to just sort of like turn the volume up, mute the mic, and also just press a button to make it start listening to you. The Google Nest Audio is more my cup of tea when I'm looking at a speaker, basically just because it kind of looks more like a speaker. It has 4 dots that appear in the middle when it's listening to you, and they sort of move about and do some jiggly stuff when things are happening. You'll get 5 color options to choose from, and they all look really nice, but to my colorblind eye, gray and sage kind of look identical, but I'm sure that's just me. On the back, you get a mute button as well, which is just a sort of flicky switch. But the main downside to the Nest Audio is that the controls are actually touch based apart from that. So if you want to turn it up and down, you have to sort of just tap the top and then tap in the middle if you want to pause and play a song, and it can be a bit awkward finding them sometimes. Now the HomePod is a bit more odd, as it's kind of like a mixture between the two. It's not quite a ball, it's also not quite a conventional speaker, but overall I do think it is the most beautiful looking of the bunch. It's got this really nice light on the top, which kind of mimics the usual Siri lighting display, and it's also a touch menu on the top, so you can tap the plus button, tap the minus button, tap the middle, and pause and play. Now it does look incredible, but in practice it's quite slow. Trying to turn up the volume, turn down the volume was incredibly painful at times when I was testing these earlier on, especially in comparison to these two. I think Google's probably the quickest in terms of turning up and down, but yeah, overall really slow. There's also no mute switch in comparison to these two, so you will have to do that from your phone, and it only comes in 2 colors again, midnight and white. One thing that is a shame with the HomePod is it doesn't come in any of the other colors that are available in the HomePod Mini, because some of those look fantastic. I'd really like to have a big yellow speaker. The last thing to mention here in terms of sort of controls and bits you get on the speakers is obviously they all have power ports, and they're all removable. The only thing that the Echo has that the other two don't have is a separate aux port on the back, which you can use to connect to another speaker. So you can basically still run the voice assistant through this Echo, but it's going to play through potentially a better speaker, which is a really nice touch. They're all also made from recycled materials within their designs, but unfortunately none are 100% recycled yet. Now, okay, so at the end of all that, this is a really hard one because they all have such positives and negatives. Overall, in terms of looks alone, I'd probably go for the Google because I just like how it looks. The Echo, on the other hand, I don't like how it looks, but it does have that extra aux port on the back and the buttons are sort of generally better. But then the HomePod looks incredible. The screen on the top is really nice and premium, but those buttons are just a bit naff. So I don't know. This is a really tricky one. I think I'm going to go for Apple here because realistically, I don't actually use the volume buttons that much. So if that's the main negative here, then I can get past that. And it just looks so nice. Number 5, sound quality. Right, so sound quality, obviously one of the most important factors when choosing any speaker, but especially when choosing a smart speaker. So let's run through some of the specs quickly. The Echo here has a 3-inch woofer and two 20mm tweeters, while the Google has a 3-inch woofer and only one 90mm tweeter. And then the Apple HomePod has a 4-inch woofer and 5 horn-loaded tweeters. I don't know what a horn-loaded tweeter is before you ask. Now, Apple claims to have room sensing sound and lots of other fancy things that don't really mean that much. All of them have multi-room audio though, and when paired with their designated smart TV's OSs, can play audio directly from a TV. Okay, so there is a clear winner here, and I don't think it's much of a surprise to find that it is the HomePod. Overall, just in terms of the punch, the bass, the mids, everything, pretty much the HomePod exceeds extremely well. Probably the more interesting battle between the two is between the Echo and the Nest, and this is more close, but overall I think the Echo takes it just because in the mids the Echo does much better. At full volume they both start to become a bit tinny, but pretty much sound the same. So yeah, I think in terms of if I had to put them in order, I'd say the HomePod first, the Echo second, the Nest third. Number 6, smart features. Now after sound quality, this is probably one of the other most important things you want to look for from a smart speaker. And like I said, all of these smart speakers kind of all do the same thing. From turning on lights, to playing music, to getting search results, news, weather, listening to radio, they can do it all. How you do those things is slightly different on the Echo, however. Alexa actually requires skills to be downloaded on the Alexa app to do a lot of the stuff you might want to do. Now, this does allow for more possibilities with the Echo, as you can sort of search and download third-party skills. But that said, I've never really found the other speakers to be that lacking in this regard. What's built in is generally good enough. Probably the HomePod is the most lacking, but Google can do pretty much everything the Echo can do, and more in some cases. The one key thing to note here is that the Apple HomePod has less music apps available. Spotify, Amazon Music, and BBC Radio are all currently only accessible through AirPlay, although I believe that if you have the Spotify app downloaded on your phone, you can actually play Spotify, but you must have a phone nearby, which is a bit strange. Overall then, you probably would think I'd give this round to the Echo as it can do more, but just in terms of the simplicity, just not having to do that much to get things to work on it, I'm actually going to give this round to Google. Number 7, exclusive features. So I didn't want to include this in the last round because there is actually a lot of stuff that one can do that the other can't do. So I thought it'd be cool to just take a look at some of the exclusives you might get from buying each speaker. Getting the obvious out of the way first, the most exclusive feature that you'll find on the HomePod is that it's exclusive to iPhone and iPad owners. But along with this, you're also going to get exclusive access to some of Apple's wide array of incredible inbuilt apps. This includes Apple Calendar, Apple Clock, and basically anything that you have on your iPhone and is native to your iPhone should be accessible through your HomePod. There's also a few built-in extras like a thermostat and a humidistat, so you can get real-time temperature from your room. There's also this feature called Handoff, which lets you transfer music playing from your phone to a speaker with absolute ease. And it is really good, actually. I've tried it a couple of times now. It works pretty much every single time. The only thing with it is how often you're actually going to use it, but it's nice to have. The Google Nest Audio has some decent exclusives too. For example, the many Google apps available all work fantastically, such as Google Search, Google Calendar. For this reason alone, the Nest Audio is a great choice for Android users who already have a lot of these apps built into their phone. That said, all of this stuff is still possible for Apple users and other phone users as long as you have the Google apps downloaded. For instance, if you need something adding to your shopping list, simply ask Google Assistant to do that, and that same item will appear on the Google Keep app on your phone. The Echo's main exclusive is Audible, which isn't available to use natively on the Nest Audio or the HomePod. However, it's important to know that all of these speakers can be used as regular Bluetooth speakers too, meaning you can just connect Audible to a Google speaker through Bluetooth rather than asking it to connect to Audible. Oh wait, actually no. The HomePod isn't a Bluetooth speaker, it uses AirPlay, but it's essentially a Bluetooth speaker. While obviously there is only one Alexa app in comparison to the many Google and Apple apps that are available, you can still find shopping list items and other stuff on there if you wish. For this round then, I think it's a toss-up between Google and Apple. I mean, because Google's exclusives can be accessed whether you're on Android or Apple, I'm going to give this round to Google too. Number 8, apps. Again, something pretty subjective, so you'll have to trust my opinion again here, I'm afraid. Now, the Alexa app is the most fleshed out, with obviously its focus on skills and keeping everything within just one app. Google and Apple rely on other apps too, so their home apps are fairly sparse in comparison. Overall, I think the Google app is the most effective and the one I probably enjoy using the most. It's colorful, it's simple, and it kind of just gets the job done. While Apple's home app is a bit more sparse and just a bit of a mess. I think routines and general customization is also better on Google, but this is actually something that the Alexa app has improved on massively recently with a big update. I guess this one is probably a tie, to be fair, between Google and Amazon, so I'll give a point to both. Number 9, price. Okay, and finally, the one you've likely all been waiting for. Now, this is probably the make or break for all of you. So the Amazon Echo is currently retailing for about $69.99, but Amazon speakers do go on sale a hell of a lot, so it's always worth checking when the next sale might be. The Google Nest Audio retails for about $89.99, and while it doesn't go on sale as much as the Amazon speakers, it's still worth checking when Google is running a sale next, like Black Friday, for instance. And finally, the Apple HomePod retails for a whopping $299. The less said about that, the better, I think. So obviously here the winner is the Echo. You get pretty much everything you get on these two. The sound is actually better than the Nest Audio, and it's cheaper. So it's a bargain. And I'm not having to go at Google's price because I think it is actually pretty fair for what you get. It's a very good speaker, can do a lot. But as for Apple, nothing can justify that price. Not even the sound quality can justify that price. I mean, you could fill your room with 5 Echoes with incredible sound. It could be all around you, a proper surround sound, for the same price as one HomePod. Tim Cook, I'm lost for words. I don't know what you were smoking when you decided on that price, but please update it. Let's add it all up, and at the end of all that... So like I said throughout, a lot of this is obviously personal preference, and you're probably going to disagree with me in a lot of ways. But again, all of these speakers are absolutely fantastic. But when it comes to the absolute best all-rounder, I do think the Nest Audio is probably the sweet spot. But if you're already in the Alexa ecosystem in some way, then the Echo is your perfect choice. The HomePod is harder to recommend unless you're an absolute mega Apple superfan, in which case you're probably going to love it no matter what. And I don't think I can really recommend it to anyone that isn't an Apple superfan based on that price alone. Even the HomePod Mini is $99, which is more expensive than either of these two. So which smart speaker will you be choosing? Well, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, why not hit like, click subscribe, and ring that bell. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Thank you.